I think that, we were talking about by the time we're 35 years old, 95% of who we are is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that run just like a computer program. You turn them on and they run automatically.
Yes.
So people get up in the morning, they brush their teeth, they take a shower, they wash themselves in the same routine way. They drive to work, they see the same people that push the same emotional buttons, they do the same things that they memorized and can do so well. For the most part, most people are functioning unconsciously. So now, if 95% of who you are is that, then you're using 5% of your conscious mind to go against a program that's been memorized. Now, a habit is when the body becomes the mind. So if you're thinking certain thoughts and those thoughts are producing emotional reactions and chemicals in your body, and those chemicals drive the same thoughts, and you keep that loop going on and on, you'll condition your body to memorize subconsciously lack, unworthiness, insecurity, and it'll run without your conscious mind. So then when you come time to change and you begin to say, I don't want to think these thoughts any longer. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to complain. I don't want to make excuses. I don't want to feel sorry for myself. I don't want to judge anybody else. And you're breaking that chemical continuity between the mind and the body. Well, once the body becomes the mind, the servant is the master. And all of a sudden the body begins to, just like anything that you've trained, it's the animal, it's going to begin to send signals back to the brain. And it's going to say things like, why don't you start tomorrow? Any other day but today. Today's not a good day to
Exactly.
change. You're too much like your mother. You've tried this in the past, it didn't work. What's wrong with you? This doesn't feel right. And the moment we respond to that voice as if it's true, we return back to the same self, thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, and living by the same emotions. But crossing that river of change then means when you become conscious that it's your body trying to be the mind and it's giving it its best effort to cause you to return back to the way you've programmed it to be. When you step out into the unknown and it feels uncomfortable and it feels unfamiliar, this is the best place to create from, because now the best way to predict your future is to create it from the unknown. Now this is where a person begins to think about who they want to be in their future. They begin to imagine what behaviors they're going to demonstrate. They begin to fall in love with how it's going to feel ahead of the actual event. And they begin to teach their body emotionally what it feels like to live in that future. And the body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference between the actual event in reality and the emotions they're creating by thought alone. And they're signaling new genes in new ways. And their brain and body begin to look like the experience has already happened. Now, when your brain and body are physically changed, there's physical evidence to look like the event has happened, then the event has already happened in the quantum field. Now, this is where you get to relax and allow the universe to organize it in a way that's right for you, that you least expect. Why would it have to be that we least expect? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. It's got to rock your world. It's got to catch you off guard and leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some result outside of you.
You mean you're talking about letting go of control?
Right. When we're living by the hormones of stress and survival, we'll always try to control the outcome and force the outcome because we feel separate from possibility. We're matter, not energy. When we really move into the state of creation and the survival emotions that are normally endorsing these hormonal centers, is moving into your heart because the identity is gone, the ego's gone, the energy has to move somewhere. The first place it moves is into your heart, and you begin to fall in love with your creation. The moment that happens, now you begin to free the body from the chains of its emotional addiction, and it's no longer living in the past. And that liberation of energy is what we call joy. When that happens, you trust in the outcome. You don't know how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, but it's not your job, because now you're going to allow a greater intelligence to organize it for you. This is the difficult part, because trusting means then it's already happened and you're going to live as if your prayer's already answered.
Oh, and normally you're waiting to have some kind of validation.
Sure. And the moment you start to analyze where it's going to come or when it's going to come,
true.
You just return back to the old self.
The magic goes away.
You just return back to the old self. The new self would never think that way. They're too busy being it. So then This is where your friends start to say, are you on a new medication, or what's up with you, because you're exuberant. But if you're creating a future and you move into an elegant state of creation and your heart is open, and you know the research shows that the field around the body, and when you start opening, your heart goes to 9 meters wide, you become more energy and less particle. You're broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature into the field. Then you get up and you're in a state of reverence and joy, and then 15 minutes later you're driving down the freeway and flipping everybody off and cursing and judging everybody. You just return back to the old identity. You have to maintain that modified state of mind and body. That's the purpose of all of this, because it would be like eating an organic breakfast with, you know, vegetarian breakfast and food combining properly, and then spending the rest of the day eating junk food.
Right.
To be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body is really the task.
That's when greatness is where the commitment.
That's where greatness is born. So meditation then is to alter your state of being, and then sustain that change the entire day. That's the test. And the one day is one lifetime. That you are able to master that day then begins to allow you to leave your past behind and create a new future. Well, people always ask me, well, how did I create this disease, or how did I create this accident? I always say, you created that accident by not creating.
Yes.
You're left to the randomness of reality. But if you want to look at how the disease may have been created, close your eyes for an hour and watch your thoughts, watch your urges, your emotions, and it's that state of being. It's the same information to the cell. There's no new experience that's signaling any new genes, and so if you keep pushing the same genetic button, the gene begins to wear out and starts to malfunction. Give the body new information, and it begins to respond to a new mind. Well, when I wrote my first book, Evolve Your Brain, the book was about spontaneous remissions of disease. So I went to 17 different countries and studied people all over the world that were diagnosed with health conditions, and they were treating conventionally or unconventionally, and they were staying the same or getting worse, and all of a sudden they got better. So I wanted to know what the cause was that produced that effect. So we found 4 common things that they had, and that was what the book was about. And then we did What to Believe, and then, you know, afterwards people started saying, well, that's really great information. How do you do it? So we started teaching workshops around the world and really teaching people how to process. That's what the second book is about, Breaking the Habit. To demystify the mystical so that you begin to understand how to do it. Well, people came to events and more events and more events, and they kept wanting more and more and more, and we started having more advanced workshops. And in the last workshop we did in Colorado here last spring, we had 7 people that had spontaneous remissions from disease.
During the conference? During the
conference, yeah. So these were quantifiable remissions. They were signaling new genes in new ways. People that had MS that couldn't, you know, feel their leg or couldn't walk were having complete function in their leg. We had people with celiac disease completely go away, chronic bladder infections their entire life, complete remission, Hashimoto's syndrome. I mean, we had all kinds of significant changes. And so, you know, I'm a scientist in my mind, and I thought, well, we're teaching people, we should be able to reproduce this, and we're reproducing it now. And now that we can measure and see that subjective mind is producing an objective effect, let's find out what's going on in real time. So we had a workshop in Phoenix last month, 200 folks. These are advanced students in the meditations. And we brought in Dr. Jeffrey Fannin and Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, and I wanted to be able to measure real-time changes. And within the first day, these guys were blown away by the changes that they saw. And we know now that, well, by the end of the event, we were capturing some brainwave patterns and some energetic patterns that were really, really quite spectacular. So we're in the process of crunching those numbers. We're in the process of looking at the effects. But again, all of this, it was the concept was information to transformation. Sure, there were folks that were doing some pretty amazing things, really, really spectacular stuff. And for example, we were watching one woman in their meditation, and all of a sudden she went into a very, very elevated state of gamma brainwaves, which is usually happens with super consciousness.
Right, months.
But at the same time, she was having all of this extended delta and theta, and we knew that she was going into bliss in that moment. And we turned and looked over at her, and the next thing you know, she just started sobbing from joy in the next moment. And the brain was in such a level of coherence. The phase patterns were